Just hop in the car, just left work. My first stop is going to go pick my kid up, take him home. Yeah, that's my best part, man, when I go home. Hey, buddy. Play with my son and when my daughter get home, too. Two bundles of joys, man.
Hi, Daddy.
Coming to me, buddy?
Yeah.
It's very tough, man. It's very tough. But you have to do it. You have no other choice but put your kid in daycare or one person stay home. So yeah, finding the daycare was a super big deal.
We're in Huntsville, Alabama, northern Alabama. We are a new automotive manufacturing assembly facility. We are a joint venture manufacturing company between Mazda and Toyota. We are a company that really trains from a variety of backgrounds. And we recruit these individuals from a 75-mile radius. And that's very important to us, that we're embracing our team members and providing the type of infrastructure to incentivize team members to stay long-term with us and feel like they're cared for. And that becomes, very important as we look at non-traditional type of benefits like childcare services.
In this part of Alabama, it is hard or difficult to find child care providers and support. Before, we had a lot of team members that worried because of swing shift or the rotating shifts, not being able to find child care and have assistance with that subsidy.
And then it was our local Chamber of Commerce contact. Lindsay called me one day and said, you really need to take a look at this opportunity for kind of a different way to think about childcare. Childcare wouldn't exist from one facility, but actually could be accommodated from nearly any facility. They may already have childcare services being utilized. Now we work with that facility, they become a member of the network with Tutris, and we actually now provide the subsidy benefit back to them.
You ready? Here we go, here we go, here we go.
Or the person that's, I don't know where to go. Well, you call our partner and work through what availability exists more closely aligned to where you live. And it really led us down the path of, this is not a Mazda Toyota project. This is Mazda Toyota saying, how can we positively influence and help the community? And is there a spot for us in that?
Hi, Nala. Hi. Yeah. Hi, girl. Are you having a good day? Yes.
The partnership between Mazda and Tutris has been wonderful for us. It has given our parents more access to our childcare facility that they may not have seen before or had access to before. And it has also given those parents in this economic time that extra, just that little bit extra that they need to make it through.
Not finding daycare will be very difficult. One of us couldn't work, definitely. Pandemic hit, it affected me big time. I couldn't really pick up a stable job. So my sister-in-law was telling her that she knows somebody that works here. So I did apply for it and we moved on. I had a hard time finding childcare. Look and look and look and look. So I didn't really know anything about the bonus part before I applied for the job. That's when I get in contact with Tutris and they did what I had to do to find me a daycare.
We have a full week of orientation to our team members, and we showcase the child care solution as part of that.
That information that they get regarding the child care assistance, you should see the looks on their faces. They are so relieved, they're excited about it.
MTM is the first company I ever worked for that actually pay a tuition towards your daycare. It fit in my lifestyle because they open very early and they close very late. Plus they open on weekends. MTM is a beautiful company to work for.
You know, if I could go back in terms of time, I would have started this in the community about 20 years ago. actually, the more of us that take part in it, the better it's going to get. And it's going to provide these solutions that are going to ultimately be positive for the providers, for the employers, for the parents, and ultimately, the most important, the children.
So bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye, you too. Bye-bye. Say bye-bye.
Good morning. I'm Caitlin Cadella-Lowe. I'm the Vice President of Policy and Programs at the U.S. Chamber Foundation, and so excited to be here with you all today. Before we get started, maybe you have or haven't heard there's a triple-demic out there, and so Tony came down with the flu yesterday and was not able to travel, and we are thrilled that he was not able to travel we didn't need that in this room. So we are very lucky to be joined by Eurus, and we are going to get started. So thank you, ladies, for being here. Before we jump into the questions, maybe just introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about where you come from and why you're here.
Good morning. I am Eurus Guzman. Like we mentioned, Tony came down with the flu, so I am here instead of him. So I'm happy to be here and thrilled. I am Eurus Guzman. Like I said, I worked for Mazda Toyota Manufacturing for almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in a couple of weeks, actually, and it has been amazing to work with a startup company. Definitely its challenges. As a talent acquisition specialist, I oversee the hiring process for all of our salary level positions. So our managers and assistant managers and our group leaders, specialists, and associate level positions.
Great.
Good morning. I'm Lindsay Ferguson. I serve as the Vice President of Workforce for the Huntsville-Madison County Chamber in Huntsville, Alabama. And so my role, similar to what Cheryl was talking about, is really looking at all aspects of workforce, specifically in our community. So always welcome an opportunity to collaborate with the U.S. Chamber Foundation and the work that they're doing. So I'm looking across that talent pipeline from a training and development standpoint, looking at early childhood education certainly as a part of that pipeline, but also looking at barriers to employment very frequently. And so childcare is certainly one of those for us that actually our community has been focused on for a couple of years. My background is mostly in human resources, and so I have a unique opportunity to collaborate really closely with our HR partners across the community and at least have an appreciation for the seat that they're sitting in as we look to solve some of those challenges.
So, Eurus, as an auto manufacturer, you are literally and figuratively moving thousands of pieces of equipment, looking to hire, I think you said 4,000 staff when
That's
you opened
right. Yes.
the organization. What does a day in the life at Toyota Mazda Manufacturing look like?
Very busy. As you can see from the video, there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts, and we need all of those 4,000 employees to make it happen, to make it come to life. We are producing 2 brand new models out into the world, which is the Toyota Corolla Cross, which we started production September of 2021, and then our Mazda CX-50, which we started production early this year. So we need our wonderful team members build life into those 2 vehicles. So in the day in the life at MTM really starts out with our team members in the press department building the model of the vehicle, will be the hood. From there, those pieces moved over to our body wheel department where the vehicle starts coming into its shape. From there, it moves to our paint department where the rich and beautiful color gets applied before moving to our assembly department where the additional components or the radio, the engine gets applied to, gets put on before it gets driven off the line to our dealers for our customers. So it's very busy. And like you mentioned, we're looking to have 4,000 employees, and some of them are from the immediate area. So when you heard Tony talk about 75-mile radius, but we also have a professional staff like our managers and our salary workers that come from other states. So they relocate to Alabama, and one of the concerns is I'm brand new to the state, might not have any family members that can help and support with childcare. So this is also a recruitment tool that we have utilized as we go to the community and start recruiting, that this is a benefit that our new team members can take advantage of and participate.
Mm-hmm. So with 4,000 employees that you had said come from like 75-mile radius, right?
Yes.
I can imagine that you have a lot of challenges that you're trying to work through in HR and recruiting. How did you identify childcare as the thing that you were going to focus your time and effort on?
Absolutely, yeah. So MTM, as many other employers, we participated in community roundtables, but we also did our own investigation with our own team members and learned that what can we do to provide childcare for our team members? And like Tony mentioned, the chamber, Lindsay, a wonderful partner she is, she reached out to us and informed us about Tutris. It's like, you really should look into this new on-demand childcare model. And so from there, we did started that connection with Tutris, and we also reached out to other companies on the West Coast that have partnered with them. Once we got the understanding and the comfort of this new model and of Tutris, then we started looking at how do we take this benefit on its cost subsidy to our team members. Once all of those pieces came together, then we invited Tutris in on site for a kickoff, and the partnership began.
Lindsay, how did you, at the chamber, how did you sort of engage with this issue? I know Tony said that you called him up and said, you need to be thinking about this.
So MTM was a partner with us in this conversation from early on. And I think one of the things just to keep in mind, especially as everyone thinks about, like the pandemic and other things. So MTM was a startup company that started in 2019. And at that point in time, they were planning to hire 4,000 people essentially over 3 years. So when you think about just like the massive need from a talent standpoint, then add COVID into that. We were actually talking about childcare with MTM in 2019, even before the pandemic hit. And so this was something that was on their radar from the beginning because they knew that they would need to be in a position to attract talent and to support that talent as well, especially during the startup of an automotive manufacturing plant. Their hiring plan was actually more aggressive than any Toyota hiring plan has ever been in the entire country. And so from the beginning, they were thinking creatively from that standpoint. But there were so many different facets of trying to solve that problem. And so that was a conversation that MTM was having regularly with the chamber as well, and actively engaged. One of those is, hey, even if you have an on-site childcare facility, it can't necessarily support 4,000 team members, or even if it's a third of them, you only have so many slots. Also, a 75-mile radius is a huge radius. So if you know that childcare is preferred closer to home, then again, having something on site is still only meeting a certain demand. And then MTM has 2 shifts that they run, but they also run rotating shifts. So they rotate every 4 weeks in terms of which shift a team member is on. So you take all of these dynamics and put them together, and everything felt like we just don't know where to start. And so being introduced to an opportunity that not only allowed them to have support in helping their team members find care, which in and of itself was kind of just the introductory piece that needed to happen, but then also providing an opportunity for some seamless transition of financial support to team members who needed that, really was something that became one of the first opportunities that I had come across through the research we were doing that felt like, hey, this might be a thing that works well for you. And also keep in mind that in a startup, there's just a lot of moving parts. So from that standpoint, they didn't necessarily have the benefit of being able to take on a lot of that administrative burden like Jasmine talked about, right? Like it's a lot. So if you jump to 4,000 people, that's just very significant. And so looking for a good partner in that became a good opportunity, and one that I think has benefited them.
Yeah, so you're at a regional chamber. You have a huge amount of companies in Huntsville. I had the opportunity to go to Huntsville. If you haven't been there, it's an amazing place.
It is.
So how are you thinking about this challenge in the region? How are other businesses coming to you talking about childcare as a challenge? And
Yeah, so I noted we started talking about this with MTM in 2019, and a big part of that is because we actually did a regional labor study because with Mazda Toyota coming, and not only their 4,000 jobs, but their supplier jobs that were coming and others, we knew that they were going to change the landscape of our community in a lot of ways, and we wanted to make sure we were prepared for that. So childcare was actually something that got identified for us to look at as a region at that point in time. So we hosted a summit in 2019. We brought about 100 people, including a lot of our business community, to that, and started a childcare task force, and started that task force in early 2020. It was timely because all of a sudden, instead of talking about childcare in the way we thought we would be, we were talking about immediate needs for childcare. But we used that to continue to do some research and studies on our own, in addition to the information that we were able to get from partners like the U.S. Chamber Foundation, in order to make sure that that conversation kept happening. So we've implemented a couple of different things. We've implemented a Best Place for Working Parents program so that we can spotlight this among our business community. But last November, we actually held a follow-up summit to be able to talk about this again. Now that we have the experience of seeing what childcare looks like, let's bring our business community back together. And so I think, we have probably the people who are talking about it the most in terms of their direct needs are those that have some of those non-standard hours, right? So that is our healthcare industry, our manufacturing industry, our hospitality and food service industry. But we also have even just our standard, we are a big government contracting town, and they're talking about it too, because a lot of them don't have the benefit of roles with remote work. And so if you are working on a classified project, you typically can't do that from the comfort of your home, regardless of what access that you have. And so that conversation has happened, and I think if anything, across the board, our business community recognizes that the business model of childcare doesn't work without some additional support, and that it really is a collective effort. And so we're starting to see a lot more engagement and interest, both in terms of providing direct pieces, but also thinking about we have to move this forward for our community. Even our industrial development board is talking about childcare. I can guarantee you that none of them thought that they would be doing that, even 2 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. So, if you look at the, sort of piecing together solutions, the childcare roadmap for employers, there are a number of ways that companies can engage in this issue. How did MTM how did they choose a subsidy? How did they choose Tutris as that's the way that they were going to invest in this solution?
Yes. As a company, we heard from the community, right? This is a big issue everywhere. We are all experiences. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to find the right solution, something that could really fit into the team members' needs. So we started looking at different options. Like mentioned earlier, there's some companies that provide in-house childcare options, and some manufacturing companies do have the ability and do provide that type of resource to their employees. So when we started looking at that and started investigating on the costs associated with building the facility and the expense that it takes for the childcare providers, really started looking at all of those numbers and comparing it to Tutris model that we had that partnership and that connection with, it just really made more sense that Tutris would help us reach a wider range of childcare providers that could really satisfy the needs of our team members, because our team members might not need childcare on site near the job. It might be more flexible to near their home base or somewhere else, and even after shift hours as well. So that partnership with Tutris just made more sense as we looked at all the different components. In addition to that, if we forego the building facilities on site, those funds will then allocate it to how do we subsidize, how do we help the team members with this endeavor. So those funds were then relocated to that purpose.
Sure. Well, we just have a couple minutes left here. So, Lindsay, I'm going to ask the same question to you that Cheryl asked before, which is to Jasmine, which is like, if another employer is watching this, if another employer is in, the Huntsville area and they're thinking, gosh, this is exactly part of the issue that I'm dealing with in this job market right now. How do I provide this benefit? Where would you suggest they start?
I mean, I think that a lot of what you guys are providing here in thinking about that roadmap is so important because, as Jasmine shared, understanding the needs of your individual business is really going to be that starting point, right? For MTM, they knew that there was a need, but at the beginning it felt so vast that it didn't feel like there could be sort of a one-stop shop solution that could address those after-school, summer hours, weekend hours, off the non-traditional hours. So I think the first piece is like understanding by addressing childcare, like what is the problem you're trying to solve for your company and what does that look like? Some of that is talking to your team members and your employees and getting that information. And also then looking at the resources. So like for us in Huntsville, I know a lot more about this than I ever thought that I would, even as a mom to 3 kids, right? Like I've lived childcare, but I have such a deeper appreciation for all of those dynamics now. And so, I'd certainly encourage you, leverage your local chamber. If they're not involved in it, then look and see if your state chamber is. And if they're not, I guarantee you people here at the U.S. Chamber Foundation have some great resources to connect from that standpoint and thinking about it. And some of it is like you can start small. Maybe the biggest challenge for your workforce is just finding care. Well, can you provide that sort of like small contribution for whatever that cost may be to help them find that care, even if you're not providing a subsidy? Because that can take hours. And guess what? Most daycares are open during the hours you want those people at work. So in order for them to spend the hours going through that, it's taking away from something else that they're potentially supposed to be doing on the job instead. So I think that would be one piece. The other, piece of some of this for us that became so important is our childcare providers are our small and micro businesses. And so even from a chamber standpoint, of our 2,100 members, more than 80% of them are small businesses. And so we also wanted to help think about solutions that did provide support and resourcing back into that industry in a way that they can continue to grow and that new providers want to come online. And so if you're thinking about it, the first thing I would say is just do it. Do something, even if it is small. And I think over time, you evaluate that, assess it, and see what the impact is and how you have the opportunity to grow it.
Yeah, I think you make such a good point that a lot of childcare providers are small businesses, and they're sort of working through these struggles in real time too. Lindsay and I joked, or not even joked, we just said earlier that thank God we have small business providers like childcare centers, because if not, neither of us would be sitting on this panel right now. So I think they are just such a huge piece of this economy, and I think that is so important to keep in mind, certainly as chambers thinking through how do we support them to do the great work that they're doing. With that, I just want to thank these 2 panelists. Thank you so much for being here. Please join me in thanking them, and we will roll the next video.